All right, let's do a New York story. Russell's heading back to New York tomorrow, and Russell's probably, man of the people that he is, going to be taking the subway from the airport to his apartment, which means he runs the risk.
All right, the way Keaton is about paying for parking, that's how I am about paying for transportation.
Yeah, no, it's brutal, especially in New York. I mean, it's horrible.
No, you know what the flat rate is now from the airport?
Well, it was 55 when I lived there.
It's 82.
82, yeah, wow.
I'm not fucking paying that. $2.75 to take the subway.
Yeah, 82
Fuck
fucking dollars. Wow.
Oh, I'm not paying that.
Russell is going to endure a shakedown from the National Guard on his way back from the airport tomorrow. National Guard, state troopers, MTA police deployed in New York City subways. This is from ABC 7 Eyewitness News, local New York news. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has ordered hundreds of National Guard members, MTA police, and state police to the subway system after a series of recent high-profile crimes. Hochul announced the move as part of her 5-point plan this week. That includes deploying 750 National Guard members, 250 New York State and MTA officers to flood the subway system. The NYPD is also ramping up more bag checks to 136 stations, covering nearly 1/3 of the system, and they will have 94 bag screening teams. MTA Chair Janno Lieber said that the National Guard is only in big stations to start, insisting operations will expand to other stations. For more than 2 decades, they have been a constant but discreet presence, soldiers with New York National Guard in camouflage quietly watching the crowds from a distance. For some riders, the soldiers are a welcome presence. For others, the spectacle is jarring and unnecessary. The governor deployed the soldiers after denying the city's request for millions in overtime funding for the NYPD. The department's chief of patrol suggests that was a mistake. Well, yeah, because your overtime shakedown scam didn't work. Our transit system is not a war zone. Chief John Chell posted on social media. Bag checks have been around since 2005. While the deployments may make riders feel safer, jailing repeat offenders, he says, will actually make them safer. What we want the judges to do when they have the opportunity to put a really bad recidivist, take them off the street after we do our job. The DA does their job and the judges do their job, Chell said. That's what we want. You take care of those recidivists, crime will plummet in the city, and the city will prosper, and we're still the safest city in the world. While some riders say they do feel safer, others think it sends the wrong message. Quote, New Yorkers want the subway to be safe, but the National Guard belong in Hamilton County. They belong in Erie County, not in New York City, said urban studies professor Mitchell Moss. The subways need to be safer, and we need police to do that. Meanwhile, Governor Hochul on Thursday tried to clear up any concerns by saying the National Guard will not be checking bags, rather serving as support staff. If you take it from the perspective of Mayor Adams and the police commissioner, rather than 750 National Guardsmen, state police, MTA police, they would have rather had the money. They got $60 million from the Transit Authority, and that let them flood the subway, but that's not the offer that's on the table right now, said former NYPD Deputy Commissioner John Miller, a CNN analyst. They met with the state police. They're trying to figure out who is going to go where. And finally, Hochul responded to the criticism, well, I already have them at my disposal immediately. You know, going through funding requests goes through a budget process. It takes a lot longer. New Yorkers are worried right now. Their main mission is engaging with acts of lawlessness, said NYPD Transit Bureau Deputy Chief Timothy Scretch. That's jumping the turnstile, use of drugs in the system, urinating in the system, and all type of complaints that we get from our riders. Let's just take a brief look at this plan in action. Here it is, woman, pink umbrella.
I'm pretty sure that's Grand Central.
Looks like it, yeah. Let's see what she's up to here. Okay, nice. Looks like an Asian woman with her mask. She looks like she might be a wacko, I guess. So here's Kathy Hochul on Good Day New York, saying that this is the way it's going to be right now, and anybody who doesn't like it can just stay home.
No search and frisk. There's no stop and frisk. There's no profiling. All this is a deterrent, saying you want to commit a crime, go somewhere else,
Okay,
not on
but
our subways.
so you're going to have the National Guard there, and they're going to search bags?
Randomly. Okay, there is a statistical.
What happens if you don't want your bag searched?
Then go home. We're not going to search you. You can say no, but you're not taking the subway.
There you go. If you don't want to get randomly stopped and have your bag searched, then you're not taking the subway. Folks, people who take the subway are often in a hurry. New Yorkers are often in a hurry to get where they got to go. Like, it is actually a major inconvenience to get stopped and have your bag searched at random when you need to catch a subway. Because nowadays, especially, the subways are running later than they used to be. Used to be you miss one, there's another one 3 minutes in back of you. Now it could be 10 to 12 minute wait. So a 30-second thing where, oh, shit, I got to show them the bag, that can cost you 15 minutes. That can make you late for work. Like, it's a fast-paced city. New York is known as a fast-paced city.
Yes, it
and
is.
it's just so ridiculous a measure to take. Really? We're going to stop people at random and check their bags. Now, we have to pick people out who are obviously not a threat so that we don't look like we are profiling the people who we deem to be a threat. And I'm not talking about racial profiling necessarily. I'm talking about this guy looks like he might be a fucking maniac who's going to push someone onto the streets. People in New York know that look, right? Transcends all types of people, right? You know, like, we're going to have to do, like, it's just clearly a show. And she actually says, statistically, this is not going to reduce crime, but it's going to make people feel better about taking the subway. A lot of this is about getting the subway revenue back up, because the subway revenue has been really in the tank these past couple years. And I think a lot of this is about assuaging people's fears so they start taking the fucking subway again. But when you randomly stop people, it makes that a huge, I mean, that is a huge inconvenience in New York. Time is money, especially in New York City. And it's just a ridiculous thing to do.
I just want to say, from the George Floyd protests, because I'm old enough and I was precocious enough to pay attention to politics even then, I remember the Reagan Revolution. And as soon as they started saying, we're going to get rid of cash bail, we're going to stop prosecuting people for petty crimes, I said, well, because you haven't addressed the reason for crime, because you haven't offered support services to these people that you're no longer going to hold on bail, you're going to get a crime wave that's going to empower a right-wing backlash. It's exactly what happened with Reagan. You go back and you watch movies from the 70s like Death Wish, it predicts the entire Reagan revolution, right? There's this increasing conservative rage about lawlessness in the cities brought on by liberal crime policies. You can't do the one without the other. You cannot. And I know a lot of defund the police activists argued for taking that money and putting it into those kinds of support services. I know that was a big part of it. But the cities didn't do that. They didn't do that. They just got rid of cash bail. They didn't create any particular. Some of them created some like psych units that would respond to certain calls. But that is not even the barest beginning of the kinds of projects you would need in order to bring down crime in communities that have been degraded and put in just humiliating situations of deprivation for generations. Like, you can't just fix it with a psych team going around.
Well, in New York,
this is the result.
In New York, what you can do, and you have a unique opportunity to do this. You can do a housing overhaul. I mean, we have a lot of vacant apartments in New York now.
Well, this is a
overhaul
scandal.
That housing system.
We've never talked about this on the show. It's just the world's on fire. It's hard to pick and choose. Yeah, no. It is 1/8 of the housing stock in New York is actually public housing. And it's in terrible condition. It's full of mold. It's crumbling. This was a big scandal when Cuomo was still the governor. As far as I know,
that's the price of freedom.
That's the price of freedom.
The mold of freedom.
According to Jon Stewart, that is the mold of freedom. That was never fixed. So, yeah, This is very much the way that I thought this was going to end, with an enormous backlash, because, Yeah, man. You take people who have already been broken by the system. They've already been criminalized. They've been institutionalized. And then you put them back out on the street. Of course, they're going to commit crime. And then you just give the people who just want to empower the cops ammunition.
I think another part of this, too, is that New York, as many of these cities, you just have not recovered from the pandemic and the response to the pandemic. Like, I remember I was in New York the first time I was really there post-pandemic, because I hadn't been in a while because I had no reason to go. I think it was like, I don't know, August 2022 or something like that. I forget. It was the midsummer. Amanda was going to a concert, and so I dropped her off, and I just hung around the city for a few hours on like a Sunday early evening. Now, it's Sunday. Granted, that's kind of a chill day. There's no rush hour. It's not the most bustling of days. It's still New York City weekend, midsummer. Something should be going on. I'm walking around Chelsea at 7 o'clock at night, and the restaurants are not open. Like,
What was
shit
that?
is
That
not open.
first summer after the vaccine?
No, I think it was the second one. I think it was 2022. It was the second one. It was a year after. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it was 2021. I don't think so. But yeah, like, shit is closed at 7 o'clock on a Sunday night in the middle of the summer. This is like Chelsea. Like I said, Sunday's not the most bustling day. It's still midsummer downtown Manhattan on a weekend. There should be something going on. And there wasn't. It was a ghost town compared to what it was when I lived there. That is a recipe for crime as well, right? You get nervous walking alone on a dark street. You don't get nervous walking through Times Square, right? The odds somebody's going to do something to you with hundreds of people on the street with you is a lot lower than if the city is a fucking ghost town and no one is around. No one's doing anything.
Well, but it's not at this point, like, population density on the street is about back to normal now. It's about
what I'm
back
saying,
to
even
normal.
at that time, I could sense, like, yes, there's more danger in the air here. And it didn't surprise me because crime was way up then. That's why Democrats lost in those blue areas some of those races that in and around New York City. That's why Sean Patrick Maloney lost on crime. The Republicans ran hard on that. That summer, 2022, before the midterms, there was the crime wave, right? And I could just sense, it makes sense. It makes sense. Like, I feel more vulnerable out here. I used to have my headphones walking around the city on the subway.
Yeah.
I never felt an ounce of danger anywhere I went.
It definitely never went back to what I would call the post-Giuliani normal after the pandemic.
Right.
Where you would walk around with your headphones and not be worried like that. Like, it definitely, the vibe was, of course, weird during the pandemic. I think something that we do have to acknowledge as a society was that the pandemic was a collective trauma. Like, people have been traumatized. Like, that's a very traumatic experience, especially for normies, who just can't even imagine, like, society being just shut down like that.
Right.
So, that's part of it too. Because you look at some of these crimes and they're crimes of madness.
Yes.
Slashing the subway conductor. Like, why do that? These are the kinds of things, but it's very evocative of the 70s. And New York is always gun shy about, we're going to go back to the 70s.
Yes.
The 70s are such a deep wound for New York. Politicians still run on that shit successfully.
Oh, yeah. Fear City.
We're going to go back to Fear City if we don't do this. That still has a lot of power.
You still hear
in
that
New
phrase.
York.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You heard it in the last mayoral race.
Yeah. Yep.
That's how we wound up electing a cop who's basically a Republican with a D next to his name. He had been a Republican for his entire career. He realized that wasn't the way to get ahead in New York politics, so he became a Democrat. But basically, he got a Republican cop is the mayor in New York. There's a reason for that.
Exactly. So we just had what I think, if I can say so myself, was a fairly thoughtful conversation about the measures being taken on the New York City subway. For a much more blue pill version, let's go to Robert De Niro, who says, well, if Hochul's doing it, I don't know, but if Trump were doing it, it would certainly be much worse.
See that the governor of New York now is putting the National Guard in the subway. As a New Yorker, what do you think of that? What do you think they'd say if he did it?
He means Trump.
Well, if he did it, it's for another reason. Her doing it, I haven't heard about it. They just told me just.
Well, if he did it, it would be like a Hitler coming back.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I'm not happy about it,
But crime in New York, I mean, you know something about that.
Well, I
You've
don't.
played it.
Well,
It's happened to you.
Live in Tribeca and the tuxedo.
I don't
park.
have.
Got rid of the
That's
film.
organized crime.
So yeah, there's the level of analysis you can.
Your move, creep.
It's coming. It's
Yes,
coming. They
indeed.
tried it. They tried RoboCop. It didn't take. They leased that robot cop in Times Square.
Oh yeah, that's right. Whatever happened to
Yeah,
RoboCop? We did a segment about
they got
that.
they got rid of RoboCop.
RoboCop got fired.
RoboCop did not pass the audition.
He kept getting wasted and coming home and beating his robot wife.
They kept catching him at the Motor Inn with a couple of trash cans and a blender.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Please clap.